So, earlier this morning, while I was enjoying my time with friends and memeing around talking about 14 stuff and, in general stuff, I caught a Twitter post that said that they had updated their policies on, stuff and things, very interesting things. And while policy updates don't initially sound super exciting for people to read about, they're not patch notes or whatever. I think these changes to the policy are things that I've seen a lot of players asking for a long time. So I wanted to go ahead and just make a quick video covering the changes in this policy and the kind of things I've seen that have made these changes both warranted, something I'm excited for as someone who's not directly involved or affected by them, and it just makes me hopeful for the future of Final Fantasy XIV, as it always does, because they keep making changes that aren't solely based on content and aren't solely based on being a company, but a company that cares about its players. So, in order to ensure players can continue to safely enjoy their time in Final Fantasy XIV, we've made changes to the prohibited activities, as well as the related account penalty policy. Although we have not upgraded the Square Enix account terms of use, the Final Fantasy XIV user agreement, or the Final Fantasy XIV materials usage license, we encourage players to take this opportunity to review and become familiarized with them once again. The following changes have been made. Regarding prohibited activities in Final Fantasy XIV, the addition of 2 prohibited activities related to the Party Finder as countermeasures against vendors of real money trading. Update. In response to RMT vendors repeatedly creating fraudulent recruitment listings in the Party Finder, the following 2 activities related to the Party Finder have been added to the list of prohibited activities. Reason for the update. Until now, when we discovered fraudulent recruitment listings by RMT vendors in the Party Finder, we first investigated for RMT activity before issuing penalties. However, many of these listings directed users to external websites, meaning an extensive process was required to substantiate allegations of RMT activity. This meant that these fraudulent listings were routinely visible on a daily basis, a situation which has persisted until now. Furthermore, as RMT vendors disregard normal gameplay and are only concerned with RMT activity, many of their fraudulent recruitment listings were created in the Duty Roulette category of Party Finder. This meant they were prominently visible upon opening the Party Finder menu, which became a major hindrance during normal gameplay. So I'm sure, as Final Fantasy XIV players, we're just kind of used to this, despite all else. It's not a great thing to have to see, hey, buy Gil from us, or buy whatever from us in the Party Finder when you're trying to go find something, especially when they started putting it in places that would very directly get in the way, as if, it would get them more eyes, but it wouldn't do the player any favors, now would it? So that's pretty much primarily what this is talking about here. When you see, buy a run, buy some Gil from us, anything like that in the Party Finder is what this is addressing. Furthermore, as RMT vendors disregard normal gameplay and are only concerned with RMT activity, many of their fraudulent recruitment listings were created in the Duty Roulette category of the Party Finder. This meant that they were prominently visible upon opening the Party Finder menu, which became a major hindrance during normal gameplay. Although various methods were considered for resolving this issue, in the interest of taking swift action without requiring extensive investigations, we've deemed it necessary to prohibit the advertising of RMT services and the creation of recruitment listings in incorrect categories within the Party Finder, actions which are routinely done by RMT vendors. We apologize for the relatively restrictive nature of these changes compared to how the Party Finder was being used until now, and appreciate your understanding. Below are details regarding the prohibited behaviors which have been added. Advertising offers to help clear content, to help learn loot, etc. via the Party Finder. It is prohibited to advertise using the Party Finder to offer help to clear duties or obtain items, to help people clear raid content or obtain items by having them join your party. A penalty will be issued if the act has been confirmed. This prohibits the act of advertising such support and does not prohibit those asking for help themselves through the use of the Party Finder. It is not a violation to ask for help or to offer a reward when asking for help, as in the following examples that do not violate our policy. However, in the examples that do violate the policy, the person offering help is advertising their services, which is prohibited. Examples of violations include selling duty clear for 1 million gil, selling duty clear and or offering the associated rewards from said content. Join for more info/details. Examples of non-violation include, I'm new. Can anyone help me clear this duty? Help me clear this duty and I'll pay you 1 million gil. I'd like to get some items from this duty and will pay 1 million gil if I can get it. So this, again, is stuff that we've seen a lot of already. You're used to it by now on your server, more than likely. You'll open up PF, you're looking for a trial, looking for a hunt party, looking for maps, whatever it may be. And odds are, somewhere in that scroll, you're going to spot, at least on Balmung experience, in my experience, 2 to 3 different ads just for, hey, pay 10 million gil and we'll clear you through Ultimate. 2 or 3 times, 2 or 3 different people, 2 or 3 different organizations, let alone the ones that are just actually RMT. I haven't seen those in a while. It's mostly been the duty sale ones, which is why I'm pretty pumped that this is now addressing that. Those will be less cluttering when I'm looking to actually run my content. Never mind that I've never wanted to buy a clear. It's more of a personal thing, but I feel like earning my way through that content makes the shiny glamour more worth it for me. But on a less personal note, just not having this cluttering, not having this obstructing, and there are undoubtedly people that feel like it's, not fair. So to all of those people, it does feel like this is addressing that, and I think that's going to be a pretty positive change overall. Please note that Square Enix may conduct investigations and issue a penalty in its discretion even if a report has not been filed. Other solicitations that fall far outside of the intended purpose of the Party Finder. The main purpose of the Party Finder is to recruit members to participate in content. Any recruitment listing that does not match its intended category is prohibited. The other category is intended for recruiting players to participate in content that is not listed in the listed categories. However, as an exception, the other category may be used for the sake of recruiting members to form a community or conduct exchanges between players. Examples of these include promoting player events, housing-related promotions, advertising for the purchase and sale of items, recruitment of members for community groups such as link shells and free companies. It is prohibited to list any of the above in categories other than the other category. If Square Enix determines that certain Party Finder listings involve prohibited activities, such as attempts to disguise RMT activity, the Party Finder listing will be removed along with a penalty being issued. Please note that Square Enix may conduct investigations and issue a penalty in its discretion, even if a report has not been filed. So, this addresses the other part of things, where, again, using Balmung as an example because I'm there, but RP server like Mateus might experience the same things, where a lot of the listings are going to be, hey, come check out our nightclub, hey, come check out this RP event, hey, here's this link shell that we want to talk about that might fit, your preference of, race, job, whatever, a hunt link shell, anything like that. So that's for the sake of community, and that would be likely seen as an exception as long as it's used under the other category. So that also pushes it down in the list, but it makes it so that people that are looking for that sort of thing, people that are looking for the community, looking for an event, will find it, rather than the people that are looking for content and finding it blocked off by 30 people advertising different nightclubs. This is not to say that nightclubs are a bad thing by any means at all, because honestly, I've seen YouTube videos of people getting in from WoW, and it's not just the content, it's not the story, but specific videos of them going to a nightclub or exploring the housing system and finding all of these houses that people have stacked and glitched and did all sorts of every dedicated action to make that house look as beautiful as possible. I think that's great, but it needs to not be blocking the intended use of the Party Finder. So this change enables both of them. It's not some hard-headed change where you can't put any of this in the Party Finder. There's no role play, no housing, no link shells, only party content in Party Finder. I think this is probably the most delicate and broad-minded way to go about making that change. So, next we have adjustments to the prohibited activities documentation for clarification and addition of prohibited activities that were previously announced. Prohibited activities that were previously announced, such as purchasing a housing plot with the intention of resale, have been added to the list of prohibited activities. Additionally, the differences between stalking and improper following, as well as details regarding the obstruction of play, have been updated for clarity with additional information and adjustments. So this covers a little bit of the basic stuff. Again, Square Enix has never been super pleased with people buying housing plots solely for resale. It's a very limited resource, it's a very desired resource, and there's just not enough for every given player on a server in most cases. So the people that are buying these with the intention to resell are not bad in the sense that they're trying to make money, but bad in the sense that they're trying to control a portion of the game that should be more freely accessible. They're changing the rates that the system itself set for their own profit, and it creates a sense of unfairness. It creates a lot of bitterness and resentment in the community for that sort of thing. So cracking down on that is important, and adding that to the list of activities that are prohibited is basically just making it, look on paper, here's where you can see this is what you did wrong, which is part of the goal with this document and these changes. Stalking and improper following likely constitutes, what's one guy stalking you around, sending you tells, constantly bothering you, and stuff like chasing someone in the overworld, like especially with the people call them WoW refugees, the new big name players that have been playing, people will mob around them and swarm them, and it won't always be a positive experience. Sometimes it's good, sometimes showing off the mounts and all that, and they're down for it, they're streaming, they love to see you guys there. But when you have a huge mob of 50 people swarming around you in a low-level zone, killing all of the quest mobs before you get to play the game, or even while you're playing the game, killing them for you, can definitely diminish the experience. And I can see why that would be cracked down on officially as well. Addition of detailed explanations and examples of prohibited activities. Sections regarding prohibited activities that primarily arise from communication-related conflicts have been updated with explanations and examples where possible. Until now, prohibited activities were listed without specific details in order to prevent exploitation and abuse of the rules. However, we received feedback suggesting that the lack of detail made it difficult to understand what constitutes a violation, which could lead to overly sensitive reactions to non-violations or violations of the rules despite efforts to abide by them. Our rules are established with the intention of allowing players to enjoy the game with peace of mind, and were not meant to become a source of anxiety for our players. As such, we have made changes with emphasis on clarity. However, there are innumerable expressions used in communication, and the provided examples do not cover every possible instance. Therefore, these examples should be seen as a reference for learning more about prohibited behavior, or for situations where you are uncertain about how to act or what to say. I think this is also, while less punchy than the previous parts, a very important change for them to make. It's so much easier for rule breaking to occur when you don't understand the rules. That almost defeats the point entirely. And adding any clarity that can allow people to understand what went wrong and what to avoid is super important when you're trying to create order in a community. While omitting information like that can be helpful in preventing the more, you want to say, clever criminals here maybe, they can kind of try and loophole and slip around the more detail you get. You didn't say this, you said this, I was doing that, so I'm not being caught by this rule. That sort of thing is something definitely to worry about when you're creating sort of community restrictions and making them clear. But the damage you do to the majority of people that are trying to abide by the rules and play normally is probably far worse, and it's one of the things that makes me so glad this has been addressed with more clarity than fear. Account penalty policy. Addition of explanation for penalty points. So an explanation regarding penalty points has been added. The reason for this update is that penalty points refer to specific point values that are assigned to each type of violation category, like obscene or indecent expressions, aggressive expressions such as violent language, slander, insults, threats, and vary depending on the severity of the violation type. The total sum of these penalty points determines the type of penalty an offender will receive. Penalty points, together with the actual penalty issued, are recorded and will be used to determine the penalties issued for any future violations. Although penalty points were internal information and therefore were not publicly explained until now, we have added an explanation as they are essential in understanding the system of reduction of penalty points mentioned below. Note that there are no changes to the procedures themselves at this time. So this is great, and I'm not going to go all the way into it because the next session is also really important to what I'm about to talk about. But again, it's adding more clarity to a system everyone almost effectively knew was there. It was one of those public secrets where everyone knows, but it's not confirmed by the source in general. And more clarity towards your mistakes, towards punishments, towards how making amends for your mistakes is always essential in a community. Implementation of a system in which accrued penalty points may be reduced based on the number of days that have passed since the previous penalty. A system has been implemented in which accrued penalty points may be reduced if a significant amount of time has passed since the last penalty was issued. Penalties are intended to urge offenders to reflect on their violations and discourage repeat violations. However, we have confirmed cases where the permanence of past penalties instead led offenders to commit subsequent violations. For example, offenders might think penalties won't go away anyway and may repeat violations without remorse or commit the same violation again as their remorse fades over time. We felt that setting decay periods for penalty points would provide users with a clear goal in correcting their behavior and decided to implement the system in order to better promote reflection and conscious restraint from repeating past violations. Since penalties would lose their significance if they were erased after a short period, penalty points accrued from the penalties of the lowest severity, a caution, will not start decaying until at least 1 year has passed. Those involving a temporary service account suspension or more severe will not start decaying until a minimum of a 3 to 6 year period has passed. We believe users who manage to maintain good in-game behavior during this period will not suddenly forget their long-term commitment, even if the reduction system completely erases their accrued penalty points. The reduction of accrued points is based on the amount of time that has passed since the last penalty. Therefore, if a subsequent violation is committed before a reduction occurs, then the countdown towards a reduction will reset at that point. In addition, this system will not reverse a service account termination. Refer to the account penalty policy for general information regarding decay periods for penalty points. So this is genius, in my opinion. This is absolutely genius. Because you're not just making clear that if you do something wrong, you're screwed. You're making it clear that if you do something wrong, we want you to know that what you did was wrong, that you cannot do this in our community. However, if you prove then by your actions that you have learned from your mistake, we have no problem forgiving you in an official capacity. And that's massive. This has been a thing since the beginning of the game, since way back in 2.x when Yoshi P and his team took over, where people have said things, done things, made mistakes back then that have haunted them to this day. People have been paranoid openly and publicly about, well, if I get mass reported for pissing off the wrong person, I already have a strike on my account. That's it for me. I will lose my decade-old account. And it's a very legitimate complaint, because while mass reporting isn't something that's condoned by the system, it is something that influences the system. It happens. It's inevitable. We all know it. We're not going to pretend it doesn't happen, that somebody can get tagged for something wrong. And it's a legitimate worry that you will lose your account over that sort of thing. This not only acts as a prevention towards it, but in more legitimate routes where someone gets angry, gets emotional, and makes a mistake and is penalized for it, they no longer have to worry that they'll get angry in 6 years and lose their account. The fact that it's not immediate is also genius because it ensures the repeat offenders that don't care or don't think about the consequences of hurting other people in the community or committing some sort of violation towards the game. They'll get tagged repeatedly in a period that won't allow the reduction to affect them. They'll still get pruned properly by the penalty system. But the people who are actually trying to learn and have a good time and just learn from mistakes or have an accident or anything terrible happens won't be unduly penalized by this system. And that means a lot to me because I know people that have lost their account and have had to, they loved the game so much that they bought another account and they came back and they've been better people after that, or at least they've been very careful about making sure that they don't make the same mistake again. And you could, as a businessman, as a game maker, say, well, it doesn't matter if their penalties don't go away. If they like the game, they'll just buy it again. But as you stack on expansions and content, it gets more and more expensive for this compilation of content that they've provided over years. That becomes a significant investment. Is the love of your game worth an immediate $150, $200 now in the future? Can you afford that? This is both forward-thinking and community-minded thinking that I love to see, and it's affecting real people that I know, so it hits home even more. And I'm so glad that Yoshi P and his team are still keeping an eye on things like this and making sure that the community is always in their mind, even as we move directly towards a new expansion that would conceivably have nothing to do with changes like this. This means a lot to me, and I'm always glad to see something like this from the Final Fantasy XIV development team. But I'd love to hear what you guys think down in the comments. Let me know. If you felt like this video, this reading helped you out, or you'd like to hear more of this, definitely leave me a like, subscribe, and I would be glad to definitely serve you guys with more content like this. I love reading out for you. Otherwise, I hope you got to learn something from all of this, even if you didn't read it. If you would like to read it, I'll be sure to include a link to this page itself down in my description. I also retweeted it already, along with a quote retweet, so you can check me out on Twitter for that. And hopefully I see you guys at the next exciting batch of patch notes for more reading. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon.